Because of magic, this realm contained many caves and demons that were evil. There were also some people who could learn and utilize magic. People dubbed them the Awakened. After many years of fighting, people in this globe agreed that the best team of awakened people was called Divine Corps. Bai Yi was the leader of this group, and he has been in charge of the Divine Corps for 10 years. Their main job is to clear out the evil dungeons in the name of a greater power known as God. The Divine Corps had been penetrating the highest level dungeons for 100 years when this operation took place. The crew was made up of the best people who had awakened. Lingua, an L-class assassin, was one of them. Han Xiaoling, who was the best at using mist magic, played the part of a wizard. Lucian, an L-class star guide who could change gravity, was the main support. The leader of the team was able to quickly deal with masses of terrifying monsters because they worked well together. After taking care of the smaller monsters, B hit the dungeon's primary boss with a deadly blow that killed it right away. B was the best fighter in history and had learned the nuclear saint technique to perfection. No one could beat her, so it was easy to kill the SS-class monster Belalfigor. Xiaoling stretched out and said that it had gone too fast again. You said she would hunt for several dungeons where he could have fun by himself. Lucian told him that this was a high-stakes task that needed all of their team members to be there. He wondered why it was so easy to kill the monsters when he saw their torn-up bodies. Yi rubbed the blade of his sword and said that the intelligence had told him that there was a monster in this cave that had the 5 elements and a secret skill. At that time, the woman put her arms around the squad leader's neck from behind. You mentioned that following this, they would all get a lengthy break and that they should absolutely have a big party. She told her partner to go out with the 2 of them. The squad leader told the comrades to get back to the holy capital, pushing the obnoxious female aside. Xiaoling yelled that the commander didn't understand women at all as he saw Yai squander his chance again. The 5th member of their squad, who was standing aside from the others, drew the leader's attention at this point. They asked the partners whether that guy would go with them, and Yui stated that the quiet guy had said he would clean up here by himself. She told the commander that he constantly took longer than everyone else to do things. Suddenly, all 4 of them heard their 5th partner snap his fingers. When they turned around, they heard the calm man say it was time to start. He pointed his finger toward one of the teammates after twirling it in the air a few times. At the same time, magic that people can't see penetrated Xiaoling's face. His friends were shocked to see blood coming from the boy's face, even though they didn't have time to think about what had happened. The young mage's dead body, which was bleeding, dropped to the ground. The squad leader turned around and intended to attack the 5th partner, murdering him without knowing why he did it. But at the same time, B's body ceased following his orders. He couldn't move and stood still. The guy heard the traitor laugh and say that they had been eating food containing paralytic powder for the previous month. At the same time, the ground opened up and a lot of lengthy roots came out. The plants quickly seized the ones that had woken up. The traitor explained that this was the genuine purpose that God had given him. To complete it, he needed to get ready in every way possible so that he might one day take full control of the situation. The traitor revealed that the god had ordered them to kill all L-class Woken after taking away the protection from the hostages. He then gripped Lingua and Lucian's bodies even more tightly. The traitor made 2 new paths while tightening his hold. He eventually got a better grip and decided to end these 2 for now. Both roots straightened up and plunged into the bodies of the Woken, killing them right away in front of their leader. B was the last one left alive. The traitor had left her for last. The guy yelled that Divine Corps had never broken any regulations, not knowing why he did it. B asked the traitor what right he had to judge them and which deity he actually followed. The scoundrel was very startled that his old pal was so naive. He abruptly got up from his seat and ran toward his victim without answering any of the inquiries. The traitor straightened his arm and stabbed his leader in the chest very quickly as he ran. He said in a scornful voice that God didn't need a reason to murder someone. Bleeding out, B asked with his last bit of power, haven't they become a family over the past 10 years? The traitor pulled his hand out of his broken body and stated they hadn't become family or even friends. He was still amazed that the youngster didn't comprehend why he was the one chosen to do this. Stop holding on to his commander's body. He said that God moves the pieces of his puzzle however he wants and that they are merely pawns in his huge game. The traitor told the dying youngster that it had not been easy for him to acquire his trust for so long. The rascal pointed his finger at the boy's forehead and stated he was horrified by the idea of wasting 10 years of his life on them. The rascal killed B in the same way he had killed Xiaoling just a few minutes before. So on May 22, 2025, all the members of the Divine Corps died. There were no more L-class awakened ones in the world after they died. The traitor turned around and claimed it was time for his vacation after looking at the bodies of the people he had been with for the past 10 years. He turned off his magic as he went, deciding that the job was done. But B's body kept shaking. The guy's mind was in a bad place. He looked around and saw nothing but a huge empty space with chains holding him in place. The guy heard a voice all of a sudden as he was still looking about. Suddenly, a shadowy figure he didn't know materialized in front of him. B looked at the weird shape with terror. The stranger said hello to the man in a kind way. B saw the shimmering lights around the weird man and knew it was Belphegor. He had somehow survived. The demon said that he was hard to kill and that they were now in the Night Kingdom, which was his soul kingdom. Bay told his new friend that he didn't have time for showy behavior and asked him to get to the point. Belphegor said that he loved the business approach and told him that his skill was called life regression. He told the man that he could transport him back in time and offer him a chance to fix things. He questioned the person he was talking to if they were interested in that kind of outcome after stating that. B thought about it and went over what had happened recently in his mind. He felt terrible right away after thinking about how much fun they had as a team. Then, once more, the bodies of his deceased partners flashed in front of his face. B had made up his mind that he wouldn't leave things like way. He declared he would absolutely murder the bastard. He also wanted to know what these gods were hiding while they sat on their high thrones and did whatever they wanted with people's lives. This was the exact solution Belphegor had been looking for. He stated that this answer was good enough, but he had something further to say. The demon then reached out his hand, which had a heart in it. He said to think of it as a small gift from him. B looked at the heart and inquired, "What do I owe you in return for this deal?" Belphegor didn't say anything in response, he just smiled. After then, Bai's eyes got a lot darker. A few seconds later, the main character woke up to someone trying to wake him up. When he opened his eyes, he saw a girl in a teacher's outfit trying to yell at him. B knew right away that she was the same person, and she knew that he had really gone back in time. He thought he was back in middle school at Awakening Academy because of his school attire and infantile hands. B was shocked as she remembered more about that period. He had been sent back 20 years to a time when he wasn't even awake yet. The woman, on the other hand, yelled at her student for choosing to sleep on the day of their waking ceremony. She made the boy stand at the back of the classroom as punishment. The main character couldn't believe that Huang's teacher was right in front of him. B didn't know how time travel worked, of course, but he had been sent back 20 years, which was too much. The boy got up and carefully walked to the rear of the study. He was amazed to see his classmates again after so many years. The main character still couldn't shake the impression that this was a bad dream. Miss Huang hit her hand on the table and told the kids to pay attention to what she was saying. She told them again that there are 5 things in the world. They are nuclear, starry, lightning, flower, and cloud. People can only hold one element at a time. The teacher showed that she owns the rarest element, cloud, as an example. There are 3 types of roles in a squad, depending on how the element ties to the body of its owner: combat, support, and special. Also, mixing different parts together lets a squad have a lot of different kinds of interactions. Miss Huang said that the children at this school were the best since they had shown that they had potential. But it was the most significant day of their lives. An awakened person can get more than 100 different jobs. They are listed in order of size: dust, ember, abyss, and sky. There will only be one chance for each of the chosen ones to wake up. Today, in addition to the element, each student's place in society will also be decided. The main character left the class and went outside. He missed the moments when he didn't have to worry about anything. B watched the kids walk by with curiosity, hoping to remember at least one face she knew. Out of nowhere, a man with glasses who he didn't know dropped to the ground next to him. Right after that, the main character heard a voice behind him that was angry. He turned around and spotted 3 tall upperclassmen. The person who was closest to him was making fun of the man with glasses who wanted to wake up from a dream. The bully stepped on the arm of the person he was picking on and told him not to think he was cool simply because he went to this school. Ong Chong Shang, the bad guy, told him that everyone here would be like bugs compared to him, the person who has the unusual skill of being a brilliant assassin. B remembered this person as the second one from school. Changjin had kept bullying people who were weaker than him during his training. The gentleman thought that the creep had some really manly genes that made him always be a jerk to other people. Miss Huang instantly stepped in and told the older student to stop this nonsense. She told Chang'an again that this was a school and not a place to steal from the younger kids when she saw him doing it again. The big man turned around and said it was the tiny guy's fault for running into them. Chang weighed the money in front of the teacher's face and questioned if the youngster with glasses should pay for what he did with a few glasses of bubble tea. The bad guys left without getting an answer, and the teacher ran to aid the young kid. On the way, Hong Changjin saw B, who was staring at him without saying a word. The towering man shoved the main character aside and instructed him not to yawn, or else they would come after him. B looked around and noticed that the youngster was about to cry. He said it was all his fault. The main character remembers that Teacher Huang was tough on the exterior but kind on the inside. She helped him a lot once he woke up. A student passing by suddenly yelled out to the woman, letting her know that it was time for her class to proceed to the waking room. The teacher then told her again to stay still during the awakening process so she wouldn't get hurt. B remembered that there are two ways to wake up in this world after all that happened. The first way is natural awakening, which is more common in those who are physically fit and have inherent skill. The second way needs a separate room where everything happens because the scientists who made it were smart. In the crystallization chamber, feelings are heightened and adrenaline is released more quickly. Here, on an artificial level, the human body undergoes significant modifications upon getting the coveted power. But you can only try to wake up once. The main character's classmate who went into the crystallization chamber got a blue rank job, which is the same as Ember's rank. B was next in line. He was a little bit scared. The boy had just had another encounter that showed him how waking up may transform anyone's life. The teacher had told B not to be lazy as he was in class today, but she didn't realize that the boy had done this before. The last time he obtained a job, it was as a nuclear warrior, which was at the bottom of the occupation tier list. But he could only find out what this job was really good after a lot of humiliation and training to S rank. Now the main character had to get the nuclear element back. B walked inside the room and waited for the result, hoping it would be the same as last time. All of a sudden, the system made a loud noise and showed a serious problem. The boy's body became stiff, making it impossible for him to move. That there could be problems like that. No one had ever told him about it. Suddenly, a voice from the crystallization room said it had found 5 elements at once. At this point, a voice that I had never heard before said that the infinite awakening system had been turned on. B saw a lot of notifications in front of her. It said he had 5 things he could use and that he could start with any lesson. When an element gained enough power, you could either choose a new random class for it or improve the one it already had. The child wanted to know a lot about what he observed. He thought that because of the system's description, he could not only choose a class he liked now, but also change it later. This meant that he could specialize in any of the potential ranks right now. Belphegor seems to have not only given the boy a second start at life, but also made him much more powerful. And the monster gave him this heart as a gift, which gave him power over all the elements in this universe. The main character could now choose from a vast number of amazing classes, which put him in a far better position than his classmates at first. B thought about it for a bit and then made a decision about who he would be in his new life. The guys who were waiting outside were a little worried. The boy was in the crystallization chamber for a long period. After a while, the main character walked out into the hallway. Miss Huang wanted to know what kind of specialization her pupil had gotten. The guy shook his head sadly and stated he had to make his teacher mad. He was able to wake up in the nuclear warrior class, which is the weakest green quality class. Miss Huang looked at the boy sadly and said she had previously seen it. She rubbed the student's shoulder and said it wasn't a huge problem because some of the best awakened people began out with low quality. Bai said that was fine and that he didn't feel bad about it. Miss Huang told him to take a break from the boring process to try to calm him down. All of a sudden, someone laughed pretty hard and yelled that it looked really sad. It was Chong X again. He thought it was odd for the teacher to say such pointless things. The bad boy pointed at Miss Huang and called her a very strange woman again. Chong moved closer to Bi Yi and said that the green rank was the very bottom and there was no way out. The rogue leaned toward the main character and said that God is harsh and only picks the strongest people to be his followers. When God was brought up, the boy was hurt. Since his rebirth, this was the first time he had heard someone talk about God. Teacher Huang, who was quite excited, asked Chang what he was doing there, but the boy didn't answer and told him that green specialization holders can only sit on the back of the tables. All weak awakened people are haunted by this kind of unfairness. They have no power, no future, and they will always be turned down. At the same time, every day they get more and more resources to help them get stronger. Xiang said that the statements about hard labor are only stories and won't really do anything. As usual, the higher powers make all the decisions and mortals can't change that. The scoundrel finally lost his rage and informed the instructor that individuals like her who don't have a lot of skills can only work at the school as a paid employee. He then told the lad that kids like him should go home and not squander public resources. The main character suddenly took the cup that Chong was holding. When Bai pinched the bottom of the cup, everything inside came out upon the face of the person who had done something wrong. Hong Chong was shocked and angry as he peered into the boy's eyes and inquired why he had done that, shaking his dirty hand. He claimed he was tired of all this talking. The rascal wiped his wet face, smiled, and shouted, hurling an insult at the main character. Chang raised his fist and tried to attack his opponent. The rogue utilized an Astrosin skill to make his assault stronger while he was running away. But Bai Yi was ready for this and made a glowing sword appear in his hand. He easily blocked the assault. The rogue was shocked that some kid was able to simply block his attack. Also, right after that, the guy blocked a counterattack that the brat couldn't get away from. Changing flew back a few meters because the counterattack was so forceful. People around them suddenly stopped talking as they saw one of the school's strongest pupils laying on the ground. Xiang turned his head to the side and spit out the blood that had gotten into his mouth. Then he gazed down at the boy with horror in his eyes. He had never thought that green-rank spatulas could be so forceful shortly after he woke up. The classmates who were shocked watched with their jaws open as the low-ranked boy beat the senior student. Suddenly, Bai remarked that he had picked this class since he was used to it. Changing chuckled and added that the kid was just lucky after hearing such stuff. The scoundrel stood up and told the brat that he was an abyss rank and that he was quite different from a lowly brat like B. Miss Hang stood in the middle of the students. She stared at the main character in shock, knowing that this couldn't be a coincidence. This kid had just woken up, but he was already able to use a special skill that only the best fighters had. There was no way for a student at his level to block perfectly without getting hurt. He was also able to employ parry, which in his class did 100% reversal damage to his opponent. It would be hard for even experienced teachers to fulfill such tight deadlines and defend themselves so well. At that point, Chong took out his knife and asked the youngster whether he was ready to die. The troublemaker yelled to everyone in the courtyard that he would make the rude kid crawl on his knees in front of him. B looked at his opponent with no interest and thought that he had picked this specialization for a reason. He already knew that it was stupid to judge someone's destiny when they woke up, unlike a lot of other people at this institution. It was a big mistake that not everyone would understand even after a long time. The two opponents stood motionless across from one another, waiting to see who would go first. Some kids started to mumble that it was against the rules to use strength to fight. And everyone could see that these two were doing it. Changing's parents were well known, and his uncle was the school dean, so everyone knew that. The boy with spectacles who was being bullied by the troublemaker yelled at the teacher that B would be sent out of school if she didn't stop. Then Miss Huang stood in front of the two rivals and told them that many of them had just woken up that day, so they shouldn't act like that. Changing said that this kid had made him angry in front of everyone, and he couldn't just let it go. The big man pointed his blade at the main character and said he would show him the difference between a chosen one and a loser. The teacher knew that Changing could easily beat B with one well-placed blow. After waking up, the high-ranked professions already had a large attribute benefit. The red-ranked specializations had twice as many qualities as the green-ranked vocations, so no matter how much the green tire professionals improved, they would never be able to beat the owner of the red tire profession in person. People who were watching the fight recognized that B had already lost in terms of both strength and reputation. The man with glasses standing nearby didn't get why you would have to battle someone who was much stronger than you. People like him could only attempt to avoid getting into fights with people who were higher up because they were awake. Otherwise, you had to learn to accept your shame and give in. Only those who could give in and bend could live. Otherwise, weaklings like him would have to face much more shame. Chong Shang got bored of waiting and turned on his characterization boost. Then he jumped on his opponent. The teacher tried to grasp the guy by the neck, but he was too quick. Then she looked at the main character and saw that he wanted to block again. This was insane because he didn't have the energy to do that. Shangyin jumped up and hit with his fist. Miss Huang knew that trying to stop this attack was pointless. B, on the other hand, merely smiled at this gradual attack. The person employed the swiftness talent to speed up a lot because he knew he didn't need to counterattack right away. After Chang'an finished his attack, it was evident that the boy could easily avoid it. The rogue gazed straight ahead in shock and understood he had lost. He turned around to face his opponent and instantly felt a sharp pain in his gut. Chang'an bowed down right away, and blood shot out of his lips again. He screamed and shook with anguish as he fell to the ground, fighting not to pass out. People surrounding them started to whisper once they observed what happened. Nobody could believe that a kid had taken down Hong Changjing so effortlessly. Miss Huang added that she didn't even have time to observe what happened again. Chai Yin, the class president, was just as interested in the whole thing. She figured out that B had somehow turned on a special kind of speed skill called Flash Blink. This skill lets the person who has it quickly move through things. But Chai Yin had no idea how B had hurt her opponent. Still, she was startled that the guy was using his skills less than an hour after getting up. The pupils who were packed around kept staring at the junior high school student in shock. At that point, the system told the main character that they had received the first 50 astro elements, which could be used to deliver a lot of damage to an enemy with that element. The system worked the way he wanted it to, but it appeared like it took too long to get points. Chongqing slowly came to his senses and urged the brat not to even think about going anywhere. The youngster grasped the dagger with a shaking hand full of hate, ready to keep fighting. Chong Zhang jumped up from the ground and swung his sword, planning to murder the rude child. All of a sudden, a booming, demanding voice told both guys to stop this nonsense. Han Ling, who was in charge of the junior high school section Awakening Academy, was there. He stared at his nephew with anger and declared that he had done enough foolish to become already. Changing said hello to his uncle, but only because he didn't want to. The dean then told the students who had just woken up to go home and get some sleep. B thought of home for the first time in a day as the tall man spoke. Mr. Hong started to scold the boy for not obeying the rules at school, but the main character didn't hear what he said anymore. Out of nowhere, the boy clutched his head. There has to be something else that happens today. B sprang out of his seat and ran away from school without hearing the dean tell him to stop. There was an uncomfortable quiet in the air. Everyone there was confused about what was happening to B. The dean then told the teacher Tier that she needed to keep her students in line better. He said he would act like nothing occurred today, and Miss Huang praised the supervisor for that. Han Lin chose to meet with his nephew at his office by himself. The troublemaker sought to show that this kid was just lucky. The dean hit the desk and told the student to stop talking about this garbage. Mr. Han questioned his nephew if he knew what this brat had done to him. Bai Yi not only employed the best skill in his class, but he also found a weak area on Chong's body in a split second. And somehow the youngster was able to do this whole thing with just basic warrior abilities. Even after 15 years of work, a dean would not be able to do it so flawlessly. Mr. Han claimed that this fight was as silly as playing a video game against someone who had never seen a gamepad before. This youngster is not as easy as he looks, though. B swiftly ran through the small streets. Now that he had been reborn, he would do everything he could to stop this from happening. The child stopped suddenly near one of the openings and knew he had made it. When he saw this sight, horrible memories suddenly came back to him. The guy was back, and this time he had an opportunity to stop what was about to happen. B pledged to stop it, even if it meant putting his own life on the line. He put all thoughts of school out of his mind for the time being. The man sat down on the couch and watched TV again. He found another show funny and laughed loudly all over the flat. At the same time, the woman in the green apron was putting the dishes away in the kitchen. B stood in the hallway and watched everything happen without saying a word. The boy went into the apartment after thinking about it for a while. His father welcomed him warmly and said that his son had come back early. The main character's eyes went right to his mother. He hadn't seen her in years and couldn't stop crying. The mom told her son to come closer. She couldn't talk, so she exclusively used gestures to talk to people. She used sign language to say that she had made his favorite spicy noodles with a sour taste. B said he wanted to eat pickled fish today. The woman told her son that she had previously served him hot noodles with sourness and that she could cook the pickled fish the next day. The youngster, on the other hand, said he only wanted the fish for today. The mother groaned and pointed out that her son was just too much to handle. The woman then left the apartment and went to the market to buy fish. The main character wanted to go with his mom, but his dad told him not to because she could handle it on her alone. The man then said that the youngster didn't even say hello to his father. He got up from the couch and asked if today was a school wake-up day. The father asked his son to tell him the good news as they walked to the fridge. He grabbed a bottle of beer since he thought their family's life was about to alter. The boy's father was a Red Range Awakening with a C-Class Electric Warrior specialization. His name was B. Ling Shang. B said that the awakening process today took too long and he didn't have time to do it. The father looked down on his son and inquired why he didn't stay at school to wait for his turn. The guy had already heard that one of his son's classmates had woken up after getting a flickering rank. Bei Ling remarked that his youngster should probably wake up at a rank of red or above. When his father got close to him, he told him that he would go out of his way to offer him the chance to train. He looked deeply into his son's eyes and told him to talk without waiting for an answer. Ba Ling could tell what rank specialized the youngster had gotten by touching his forehead to the boy's head. The main character tried to say that he hadn't had time to go through the crystallization process. But at that moment, a beer bottle hit him hard in the head. The father became quite angry right away when he found out that his son had been granted the rank of dust. He finally lost it and said that the youngster had been going to school with such an important look all this time. But now he was just meaningless dust. The father lost control of his emotions and kicked his son in the face, sending him to the ground. The boy's mind immediately went back to the things that happened on this day in his prior existence. His father became upset and started hitting him once he got the rank of dust. The mother sought to keep her son safe from her violent husband, just like she had done before. But at that time, B was too weak and terrified to accomplish anything. Ling stopped hitting his son and started hitting his wife. The torture lasted more than an hour, and when it was ended, the mother's leg was fractured and her skull was cut. After that, she was unable to do anything and her mind was not stable. He could change the course of history now that he could send his mother to the store. Bai Yi chose to wake up in the same class again, even though he had a choice, but he needed time to get stronger. B stared at her son laying on the floor for a moment before telling him to get up. The main character stared at his dad. Most of his traits were dozens of times stronger. Also, his father had a lot of experience in real battle, unlike Hong Chang. No matter how hard B tried, she couldn't beat him today. Ba Ling hit his son again and yelled that he should not have let his mother give birth to him. The youngster kept getting hit, but he believed that at least he had kept his mother safe from this bad guy. In the corridor, there was suddenly the sound of parcels dropping. B turned around and saw his mother, who was horrified by the beating. The boy didn't know how soon she had come back. As her husband turned to her, the mom stared at her beaten son in shock. He told her that she hadn't given birth to a kid, but to useless trash as he got closer to her. The youngster jumped up when he saw that this villain was about to hit his mother. At that very moment, the father turned his head and observed this. There is no doubt that his reaction was better. The man waved his hand and hit his son in the head with a strong punch. B flew to the other side of the room. His mouth was bleeding. The father glanced closely at his son. It seemed like the boy had really woken up. If not, he would have perished right away from the blow. The mother ran to her hurt child right away. The woman didn't know what to do, so she spread her arms and blocked her husband's way. Bei Ling Sheng grinned and stated that he was quite thrilled when he heard that his wife Ruan was going to have a baby. He thought that their family had a real chance to become better on that joyous day. The father grabbed a chair and remembered the tales from the neighbors that they wouldn't be able to have good children. He walked up to his wife and said that the Bei family still needed him to make their name renowned. Ling doesn't get why his kid has decided to become a green shooting range worker. The scoundrel yelled that a woman like her couldn't understand his sorrow as he swung his chair. A dazzling green ray of light flared just before the impact, tossing the chair to the side. B got the strength to stand up and stop his father's punch, which was blocking his way. The youngster who was hurt stated he wouldn't let anyone touch his mother. The father just thought this performance was funny. He said that the ripped garment was interesting when he looked at it. Ryan wanted to tell her kid to get away, but he was standing with his back to her and stretching his stiff neck. Ling said he was happy that the youngster was now an adult. The father laughed again and carefully walked over to his wife and son. The main character thought it would take longer than he had thought it would. The boy tried to stop his dad's blow by putting his sword in front of him. He was able to use the parrying skill again, but this time his sword couldn't take the hit and broke. Because the disparity in strength was so big, B didn't have time to dodge and got a hard blow to the stomach. When he got his senses back, he sought to stop the next hits with his hands, but Ling couldn't be stopped. He slapped his son harder and harder, yelling that he was too useless to live. He pushed all of his anger into his last punch. B couldn't stand up and fell on the floor again. The man claimed that his kid had stamina, but there was nothing wrong with it because he had a very weak job. Even if the boy is strong, the father felt he doesn't deserve to live. Ling Yang said again that it was dumb to think he was cool just because he woke up. He turned around in a wrath and said one last time that the boy didn't know who was in command of their family. But then there was a loud knock on the door. The man was annoyed that someone had destroyed such a great time by making an unnecessary noise. B finally let out a breath after hearing this. In the end, they made it in time. Ling yelled at the strangers for knocking so loudly when she firmly swung the door open. Liang, the deputy captain of the inspection, and Chen Jin-woo, the investigator, were standing on the porch. They were surprised that the landlord had taken so long to open. Ling, who was almost as shocked, inquired why the two had arrived. Ling took out a notice and indicated that their agency had gotten a report that a killer named Snow had been sighted in the area. The inspector wanted to know if the man had seen anyone acting strangely. Ling Chang smiled uneasily and stated that he watched the man on TV all the time. But he had never heard of somebody like him lurking around their house. The inspector saw a mother and a bleeding toddler after looking around the residence. Ling then asked the man what had happened to his son. Ling put his hand on the inspector's shoulder and remarked that the dumb kid had just fallen badly while going to get groceries. When he heard this, the main character strongly disagreed and asserted that his father had hit him. The father turned around and stared into the child's eyes with horror after saying these things. B actually called these inspectors before he went into the house and told them he had seen the killer, who was known as Snow. He understood that after such questions, the inspectors would travel to the scene in pairs. Ling hesitantly tried to talk himself out of it when Ling asked him whether it was true, stating that the boy was just joking. The main character then said that he was first hit in the head with a bottle, then with a chair, and then he was hit multiple times on the chest and head. B remembered the punishment that happens to awakened ones who can't control themselves, in addition to the fact that all of his injuries may be seen as beatings. The boy remembered that the 4th article of the 8th chapter of the canon on dealing with awakened ones said that a criminal who might be a threat to others should be held and sent to prison for 15 days. Both inspectors were really surprised by how precise the wording was. But Ling was quite angry. His son did learn something at that school after all. Ling took a short break before introducing himself again and telling Bei Ling that he was being held legitimately and had the right to remain silent. When the father heard this, he tried to attack his son again. But investigator Chen Jin-woo quickly stopped him. Ling yelled at the youngster to wait for him to come back before the front door of the apartment closed. The door banged shut, and the apartment was finally silent. Roan ran to hug her kid right away, and he started to calm her. B had saved his mother this time, and now he had 15 days to get ready. The youngster told his mother that this would be the last time something like this happened. The main character held the key tightly in his hand as he hugged his mother. He was able to get this key off of his father's pants holder during the fight. The boy knew that this key opened the door to a place where some of his father's teammates had died. He had also moved up from E rank to C rank. B went to his father's office and located his safe when his mom calmed down. The youngster knew that his dad kept this thing in his safe so that no one else could find it. He only learned about it after Bei Ling died in his previous life. Bai Yi opened the safe and took out his father's dagger. This was the key to his speedy climb. Demonic dungeons were the only way for him to get better at his job right now, but now all the caves were God's property and only guild members could go in. The man has only 2 choices. He could go to the caves that the school ran or to a secret dungeon that he knew about from his previous life. It was clear that Bei Yi wanted to move quickly, thus the option of the hidden dungeon was easy. At the same time, Bi Ling was already in the inspection branch's cell. More and more new employees came into the room and told dull stories. Flyers about a killer who was wanted and went by the name of Snow kept showing up. The main department thought that the killer was in this county. Chen Zhen-woo told his partner that he thought the captain would come back early. Ling said that it would be better if they didn't talk about it. Ba Ling suddenly altered his tone and started imploring the deputy captain to let him leave. He has already recognized his error, thus this is his first incarceration ever. The man claimed that a dear friend of his had just opened the best postpartum care center in Cheshi County, knowing that the inspector's wife was due to give birth. Ling said without much thought that he couldn't be bribed. He remembered that Bei Ling was a member of the guild as he left the office and wondered what had happened to him. The man felt a tremendous pain in his heart as he heard these remarks. Chen Jin-woo added that the bribes would definitely be found out and that they would be put in jail after getting all the paperwork they needed. Before he left the office, he told the man to be quiet and sit still until tomorrow. He was ashamed of Ba Ling and blamed his weak son for everything. At the same time, B went into the structure that had the secret cave. Usually, the guild that opened a demonic cave would protect it with its own soldiers. These dungeons are well known for having a lot of creatures and different kinds of materials. You may level up and make money by going through these dungeons, but the so-called doors can show up anywhere, and you still have to find them. B knew from his prior existence that news about this secret dungeon didn't get out until 5 years later, when monsters overtook the human world. To get a F rank in a dungeon, you had to have at least 3 awakened E rank dungeons. To get into an E rank dungeon, you need a team of 5 people that are awake. 3 of them must be at least E rank, and 2 of them must be at least D rank. Based on his own assessments, the hidden dungeon was most likely F rank with a 90% chance. Also, this cave was the lowest ranked of all the hidden caverns that B could get into. The demon cave demanded teamwork, of course, but the guy didn't have time for that. He didn't have much time left to get stronger than his dad. It was really cold all around once they went through the portal. The man thought that this was where cloud-like devils lived. As Bai walked down the deserted, frigid hallway, he kept going. He soon found a big E8 rank ice bear that was resting. He could tell that someone had been here before because of the bones on the ground. All of a sudden, the main character heard someone behind him scraping their paws. He quickly whirled around to see who the enemy was. There was a 10% possibility it was an E-rank dungeon, and when the monster jumped on the youngster, it reinforced his suspicions that this would not be an easy trek. B moved out of the way of the wolf's attack. When he landed, the youngster said that even one monster was as strong as he was. The wolf jumped again right away and grabbed the sword that B had covered himself with. The creature halted after a couple more attacks that didn't work. A chance for the boy to try to carry out his attack. He quickly jumped up to the monster and cut it in half with one blow. B looked at his father's dagger as he heard the dead body hit the ground. He had a big advantage over such a weak beast because he had an A-rank weapon. The child thought back fondly to the times when he had a L rank. While B was checking the system notifications, monsters showed up in front of him again. This time, there were a lot more of these wolves, and they were moving slowly toward the foreigner as a group. He realized that the stench of blood had drawn them in, and now all the creatures were attacking him. B got out of his seat as he realized it was time for a genuine fight. He was able to attack the first beast hard since he had his father's blade. The child had to show that he could fight a full crowd of foes in a fast-paced duel. There were a lot of wolves, but none of them could keep up with him. B thought it was time to make one last attack after he had worn down his adversaries enough. He quickly moved past the demons that were still alive, cutting them in the chest and neck. So in front of him was only the Wolf King with double the level. B used his class talents to hit the creature dozens of times in the blink of an eye. The hero got a Snow Wolf Diamond and 18 prize fangs after beating the pack. The guy appreciated how fast the pumping was. This was how he could get to the D rank. B attained level 3 after a lot of practice, which raised his stats by 24 points. E rankers have big challenges with their stamina. Also, it was important to bring a backpack so you didn't lose so much loot. It was hard to go here by myself, but it was worth it in the end. The man kept walking down the hallway, knowing that there was more danger ahead. B assumed that being in this cave for a long time would make him weaker, but the wolves came up behind him again. The boy needed this, so he rushed on, knowing that there were thickets ahead of him. He cut down the trunks of a few of the first trees he saw. The trees fell with such force that the sound resonated through the cave. This drew in new creatures, who quickly ran toward the noise. At one point, the main character stopped since there was no place else to go. He looked around after he had run for a long time. There were massive groups of monsters all around him. They had just raced away from the cave, and suddenly there was a huge explosion on the upper level. Of course, the 1B had high expectations for had to wake up too. The creature ran down and crushed one of the wolves with its massive white paw. The only way for the ice bear to wake up was to make a lot of noise. The creature got angry right away and started smashing everything in its way. In the middle of the chaos, B attacked the creatures that weren't paying attention. At this moment, the bear was in full berserk mode and was killing anyone who moved. The only thing left for the man to do was to kill the people who the ice bear hadn't had time to kill. B had learned throughout the years that E-rank creatures were highly dangerous, but also quite dumb. But he definitely needed to slay the monsters that the bear hadn't killed yet if he wanted to get enough experience. The gentleman went down on one knee after a few quick moves. The bear was quite helpful, although he was already very exhausted. He looked at the masses of monsters, swung his dagger, and knew it was time to move on to the next step. This level was quite weak after the ice bear had done a lot of damage here. The creatures attacked the youngster again while he stabbed the knife into the ice crust with all his strength. The many fissures on the surface started to get a lot bigger. At one point, part of the floor gave way and the monsters fell into a deep hole, where they died and gained a lot of experience. Bai Yi and the monsters were also on opposite sides of a vast chasm. The main character got a lot of resources for winning this stage and the 7th level. But the monsters didn't stop because of the gulf that formed. A big ice bear and some wolves jumped down the cliff and landed next to Bee. He was the only one left with the last set of low-level monsters. He knew he would have to confront the last boss of the dungeon as well as these demons. Bai Yi thought that the strange sounds would also wake up the Lion King on the 10th floor. The boy suddenly saw a bizarre ice spell that he wasn't ready for. From someplace in the dark, ice streams reached out to both Bee and the demons that were around him. He didn't understand how spreading he was until a few seconds later. The person ran away with all of his legs, and the monsters followed him. An ice beam suddenly hit a big bear, and it froze extremely swiftly. Bee understood that he was not dealing with an ordinary creature. This creature was waiting for the proper time while the guy fought. That's right, something pulled on his leg. The boy turned around and discovered that his right foot was stuck to the ground. It looks like the cold floor was also part of this smart trap. The main character's body had almost entirely frozen over time. There was clearly someone strange lurking in this cave. Out of nowhere, the outline of a boss Bee had never met before came out of the shadows. The evil king of Kanglins was sitting on a piece of ice. There were 10th level Kanglins running around right below him. The devil smiled and looked the caught youngster straight in the eyes. Bee looked at the strange monster with terror. He thought that this was the end of his journey.
The cave was clearly an extremely dangerous place, a high-risk zone that normally demanded a team of strong, high-ranking fighters. Because the environment was so cold, Bai Yi's entire body was becoming frozen solid. He feared he would quickly develop hypothermia, which would mean his immediate death. Seeing his predicament, the monkey boss simply raised its hand, pointed directly at Bai Yi, and ordered all its monkeys to attack him at once. Realizing he was completely trapped, Bai Yi decided his only choice was to use the parry skill. Since successfully using the parry skill requires absolutely perfect timing, Bai Yi waited patiently until the enemy's attack was just about to hit him. He then quickly activated both the parry and shatter skills. This broke the surrounding ice that had locked him in place and successfully blocked the incoming attack. Although he was free for the moment, Bai Yi knew he was in serious trouble because he had used up a huge amount of his stamina. The shatter skill allows an awakened person to use up all their energy to forcefully break free from freezing or binding effects, but it drains a massive amount of stamina in the process. Bai Yi calculated that the demon monkey would need time before it could use its powerful ultimate skill again, and he understood he had to kill it before then. The demon monkey immediately commanded the terrifying ice bears and wolves to attack Bai Yi next. Knowing that his nuclear element abilities were generally weak against the cloud element of these creatures, Bai Yi recognized that his chances of winning were very low. He was already running on low stamina and was rapidly becoming completely exhausted. The demon monkey watched the fight from a safe distance, sitting like a true villain as it directed its smaller monsters. Bai Yi knew that if any more beasts appeared, he would certainly die. While he struggled to find an escape route, one of the monkey beasts suddenly attacked him, trying to smash him with a large club. Bai Yi barely managed to block the huge blow, but the force violently pushed him backward. His knee scraped painfully across the ice floor as he fought to stay balanced. The sudden, fierce attack caused Bai Yi to lose nearly all his remaining strength, putting him at a severe disadvantage. The constant, loud screaming of the ice bears weakened him even further. One bear threw a huge ice boulder at Bai Yi, but he successfully cut it in half. However, the intense cold wasn't helping, and his stamina was almost gone. The moment the demon monkey noticed Bai Yi was critically low on energy, it immediately used another ultimate skill, the Ice Storm. Bai Yi was completely shocked, as he hadn't expected the monkey's ultimate ability to recharge so quickly. His eyes widened in horror as he stared at the fast-approaching attack. This moment reminded him that in his past life, he had faced many life-or-death situations and had developed a crucial ability to spot potential opportunities. Bai Yi realized that in his current, weak state, he had only two choices. He could stay and fight, but since his stamina was already depleted and he was still taking damage, he would not survive. The second option was simple: run away. Bai Yi wasted no time and chose the second option, immediately leaping off the edge of the cliff. As he fell, however, the demon monkey struck him with one final ice spell, which hit and caught his feet. This caused him to lose control and tumble instead of having a controlled fall. With ice forming around him, he crashed violently into the cold river below. Meanwhile, back at home, Bai Yi's mother walked into his room. She thought Bai Yi was still sleeping but was instantly shocked to find the room empty. Bai Yi had left the day before, a Friday, and now it was Saturday. His mom found a short note from her son saying he had gone to a friend's house. Bai Yi had written that she shouldn't worry, but the note only made her more anxious because she knew he would have told her in person instead of leaving a message. She wondered why he had left a note, questioning what was going on with him. He had been acting strangely since the day before. The woman felt uneasy with many stressful thoughts racing through her head. Back in the dungeon, Bai Yi survived the terrible fall. In fact, jumping off the cliff was always part of his strategy. He remembered that almost 100 beasts had fallen into the river earlier when he broke the ice bridge. However, he only received rewards for 40 of them, which meant the others must have survived as well. Bai Yi coughed in pain as he managed to drag himself out of the icy river. Although he was alive, he was running on very little stamina. He was suffering from blood loss, an extremely low body temperature, and was in a completely weakened condition. His body was also badly injured from falling from such a great height. Without a doubt, Bai Yi knew he had reached his absolute physical limit. As he lay there, he briefly wondered if this was finally the end. Before he knew it, he was completely surrounded by beasts like the ice bears, who were ready to finish him off. As they moved closer, Bai Yi began to remember his life. He recalled his intense time with the Divine Core, the good times with his teammates, and his mother's loving care. He also remembered the darkness of his father's evil deeds and the deep pain of a traitor's betrayal. A voice in his mind told him that this was the end. This thought was enough to make Bai Yi clench his fists and declare firmly that it was not over. He managed to stand up just as an ice bear was about to land the final attack. He quickly raised his hand and somehow stopped its giant teeth from closing around him. Bai Yi was determined that the horrible things from his past life would not happen again. He had already died once and lost everything. This time, he was going to change everything. With this new, fierce determination, Bai Yi smashed the ice bear and powerfully threw it far away. He let out a cold breath and quickly grabbed his short sword again. This desperate action suddenly triggered something that could lead to a class advancement for him. Bai Yi stood with a bright yellow aura swirling around his body, surrounded by the remaining monsters. His decision to attempt a solo dungeon run and face these dangerous beasts was an intentional way to make himself feel the desperation he had felt in his past life. He hoped this feeling would trigger a rush of adrenaline, which would, in turn, cause his class to advance. Although he nearly died, he did not meet the exact conditions for the class change. However, instead of an advancement, he learned a new ultimate skill called Nuclear Holy Swordsman. This skill was incredibly powerful and far beyond his current level or understanding. While he didn't advance his class, this ultimate skill would be extremely useful. With this new skill and the rush of adrenaline, Bai Yi was filled with incredible energy. He pointed his sword at the beasts, telling them their time had come to be completely wiped out. One beast moved, and all the others immediately followed. Bai Yi remained calm and unaffected as he prepared his short sword. As they got closer, he unleashed a rapidly swirling, incredibly fast attack he called Sanctuary that sliced through all the surrounding beasts. In a single motion, he cut them all down. Notifications instantly popped up, confirming he had defeated the ice bears and forest wolves and showing the large number of experience points he had gained. After defeating all the monsters, he acquired valuable items like Icefield, Beast Hide, Proud Barebone, and Blood Tooth. The Sanctuary skill had the incredible effect of completely clearing his fatigue and restoring all his lost stamina. Additionally, Bai Yi received an upgrade and obtained the Icefield Wanderer title. This title provides resistance to cloud element creatures, plus a permanent 100 damage reduction, which was exactly what he desperately needed. Bai Yi looked up at the top of the cliff, promising himself that he would wipe out the rest of the beasts, including their boss. With the sudden flood of experience points, he quickly upgraded to level 9 of the E-class. Bai Yi immediately activated the Icefield Wanderer effect to resist the cold. The Sanctuary skill also allowed him to store up damage he took from enemy attacks and then release all that stored energy onto a group of enemies at once. However, he could only use this final powerful effect after taking a large amount of damage. Bai Yi felt a surge of relief, thankful that his new skill had completely restored his stamina. With his energy renewed, he suddenly remembered his urgent need to finish the battle quickly and return home before his mother started to truly worry. He rapidly climbed the cliff face and made his way toward the opulent palace of the demon monkey boss. The palace was guarded by numerous ice beasts, but Bai Yi was completely unconcerned by them and burst directly into the palace. After swiftly defeating more of the creatures inside, he had accumulated enough experience to reach the final tier of the E-class, level 10. Meanwhile, back at home, the time was now 11 p.m., and his mother was becoming seriously worried. She had lovingly prepared food, but she was left sitting alone, wondering where her son was. She whispered a quiet prayer that he was safe. Inside the boss's palace, Bai Yi quickly took out the remaining ice bears guarding the main hall and was left to face the boss's personal guards, the terrifying monkeys. The monkey boss appeared utterly unafraid and immediately ordered its guards to eliminate Bai Yi. One monkey leaped at Bai Yi, but he simply blocked the attack and then, with effortless speed, sliced it cleanly in half. The monkey boss witnessed this display and immediately realized the situation was dire. It angrily unleashed its ultimate skill, the Ice Storm Assault, but the attack had no effect whatsoever on Bai Yi, who was now completely immune. Bai Yi swiftly dashed toward the monkey boss. In a desperate, final move, the boss raised its staff, activating a spell that caused the jewel on the staff to glow. This magic forced the remaining monkeys into a hyper mode, but Bai Yi didn't see them as a threat. He only viewed them as obstacles, more beasts he needed to kill to finally reach the D-class. Bai Yi cut through the charging beasts as if they were made of air, before quickly relieving the monkey boss of one of its arms. The boss screamed in agony as dark blood spilled profusely from its severed limb. Before the boss could attempt any other move, it looked up to find Bai Yi staring at it with a deadly, cold gaze. Bai Yi unleashed a rapid series of cuts across the boss's body, swiftly defeating it. A notification immediately popped up, informing Bai Yi that he had successfully defeated the D-class Cloud Element user, the King of the Azure Forest, and had gained 1,000 experience points. Furthermore, he had successfully advanced to the D-class Nuclear Warrior. Following this victory, he saw several items available to pick up. Because of the intense experience he had gathered from fighting a Cloud Element enemy, the system suddenly told him that a new profession was about to awaken. Bai Yi was shocked, having completely forgotten about this possibility. A shimmering red and blue aura began to radiate from his body. He had awakened the Cloud Element Mage profession and could now switch between his professions at any time. Bai Yi was excited to have awakened a red profession even while he was only at E-class. Unlike the Nuclear class, which provided a 100% bonus, the rare Red class came with a massive 200% bonus to its strength. The Red class's power was already on the same level as his current primary class. Bai Yi then gathered the mage weapon, the Stone of Magic, and also found a handy magic pouch that could hold 20 items while he collected his loot. The few remaining beasts could only watch in terror. Once he was finished, Bai Yi looked up and realized a few more beasts had survived. Since he had just awakened a new profession, he decided to try it out on them. He switched to mage mode, a red aura emanating from his eyes as he prepared to annihilate them with his new power. It was now 5 a.m. the next morning, a Sunday. His mother hadn't slept all night and was sitting anxiously in the living room, hoping for her son's immediate return. Just then, Bai Yi opened the door, and she instantly stood up. Bai Yi walked in, smiling warmly, and apologized profusely for causing her to worry so much. His mother ran over and hugged him tightly, crying with relief. Bai Yi was genuinely shocked to see that she had been waiting up all night for him and hadn't even eaten. He then told her he had good news to share. While leaving the dungeon, Bai Yi had gathered some valuable items, thanks to the convenient magic pouch he had found. After leaving the area, he encountered an orb broker. The broker offered to buy the rare orb Bai Yi held for 800, but Bai Yi quickly countered with a price of 8,000. This bold demand shocked the broker. Bai Yi didn't argue further and simply took the orb back. The broker was then forced to increase his offer to 2,000, but Bai Yi countered again, demanding 5,000. The broker proposed 3,000 as his final offer. As the broker spoke, Bai Yi began to increase his counter price, and it quickly appreciated to 7,000. The broker was still arguing and hesitant, but when he realized Bai Yi would not back down, he quickly agreed to take the ore for 7,000. Because Bai Yi had extensive experience dealing with brokers from his past life, he knew exactly how to negotiate with them. With the substantial money he earned from selling the ore, he immediately rented a new apartment for his mother. In his past life, his mother had been plagued by one financial problem after another, but now Bai Yi simply wanted to take care of her and ensure she was comfortable and happy. He finalized the apartment deal right in front of his mother, shocking her with the unexpectedly high price. By 8 p.m. that Sunday, they had successfully settled into their new apartment. Bai Yi was deeply happy to see his mother smiling. It had been a very long time since he had seen such a joyful expression on her face. Even with the exciting acquisition of a new apartment and his successful promotion from E-class to D-class, Bai Yi knew he could not afford to relax or let his guard down because of the danger posed by his father. Bai Yi's immediate desire was to resolve the issue with his father before he could fully focus on his main target, the traitor. To bolster his power, he put on a magic stone on his right arm, which had the effect of increasing the area of effect (AO) of his magic by 50%. At the same time, Palm was training with desperate intensity to surpass his limits, relentlessly jumping from one labyrinth to another without any rest. When his own sister attempted to convince him to take a break, he angrily slapped her hand away. Palm was clearly prepared to do anything to maintain his position at the top. Elsewhere, an unknown individual was reviewing the list of newly awakened students and felt a profound disappointment due to the apparent lack of truly exceptional talent. The next morning, at 7:30 a.m., Bai Yi's mother had lovingly prepared breakfast for him. Bai Yi was shocked to realize he was running late. He asked his mother why she hadn't woken him up, and she replied gently that he had been resting so peacefully that she couldn't bear to disturb him. She lovingly patted him on the head, urging him to eat slowly. With his mother's comforting presence, Bai Yi finally calmed down, recognizing that it had been an extremely long time since he had experienced such a peaceful sleep or an unhurried breakfast. Just then, his mother asked if there was anything he wanted, such as a toy or a book. Bai Yi was completely surprised by this sudden offer of gifts. His mother reminded him that his birthday was next Friday, June 5th. It suddenly dawned on Bai Yi that she was correct, but he had totally forgotten, as it had been too long since he had last celebrated a birthday after his mother had passed away in his past life. After that loss, no one ever celebrated his birthday again, and he had gradually allowed the date to slip his mind. As he ate, Bai Yi racked his brain to think of anything he truly wanted, but he was left confused since he felt he already had what he truly desired. His next and most vital goal remained the same: to kill the traitor who was responsible for his and his team's deaths. When Bai Yi arrived at school, he learned that everyone was preparing for the combat simulation. The teacher stood before the recently awakened students, explaining the details. He clarified that the academy was closely supervised by the Divine Guild, who would be watching their every move during the event. The combat simulation, the teacher explained, was the best possible way to impress them. He further revealed that it would serve as the school's graduation assessment and would be broadcast live. The student with the best performance would earn the right to participate in a training camp with the high school division. This camp only occurred once a year and was the greatest opportunity to connect directly with the Divine Guild. The school usually arranged for the best students from both middle and high schools to travel together to the Shanghai Nation, where the Divine Guild headquarters was located. Bai Yi immediately remembered the Shanghai Nation as the place where he had met his master and also where the traitor was born. However, the traitor had never met his master since he only joined the Divine Corps after Bai Yi did. Bai Yi realized that he must achieve high scores in this assessment to secure a place in the training camp, which would give him more opportunities to find the traitor. The simulation battle was scheduled for this Friday, only 4 days away. While some students were excited, others, like his former best friend, Specs, were worried because the assessment would take place inside a real, dangerous labyrinth. The teacher then pointed toward the training room for their first session, physical conditioning in the gravity room, where everyone was instructed to begin with 10 sets of shuttle runs. Surprisingly, Bai Yi walked directly up to his teacher, stating that he did not want to use the recommended training room. This declaration shocked both the teacher and the other students. The teacher cautioned Bai Yi not to get ahead of himself just because he had defeated Hong, believing he was simply trying to skip training. Bai Yi quickly clarified that he wanted more specialized training. The teacher was confused and asked if Bai Yi was suggesting there was a problem with his teaching methods. Bai Yi calmly explained that while physical conditioning was necessary for most awakenings, and the gravity room was not a bad choice, he believed the shuttle run was only truly best for classes like assassins and warriors, which primarily required speed and coordination. He argued that not everyone needed this particular focus. He told the teacher that classes like mages and enchanters would be better suited to train in the elemental room. He added that everyone should be allowed to train differently, since their respective classes were utilized in different ways. The teacher listened and pointed out that Bai Yi was essentially teaching him his own job. Ji Yan happened to overhear the conversation and was shocked. She realized that Bai Yi's proposed training method was the exact same one mentioned by a Divine Corps training officer, Mr. Dong Yang. However, it was a new method, and she would only know about it because her father had brought home the training videotape. Ji Yan was utterly surprised that Bai Yi had arrived at the same exact idea. Specs quickly advised Bai Yi to avoid being so blunt with the teacher, who was the school's most authoritative trainer. Instead of becoming angry, the teacher patted Bai Yi on the shoulder, smiled, and admitted that the training method he mentioned was interesting. The teacher then explained that with so many students, it would be difficult to cater to everyone's specific needs in the short term. He pointed out that the combat simulation assessed a student's entire performance, and if he did his job wrong, it could potentially derail a student's entire life. Bai Yi remembered that even though he had a terrible family life, his teacher had always supported him in his past life, helping him grow into a responsible person. He turned to the teacher, assuring him he wouldn't let him down. The teacher then asked Bai Yi exactly how he intended to train as a nuclear warrior. Bai Yi suggested turning on the elemental suppression in the elemental room to its maximum setting. This suggestion shocked the teacher and even Specs. Bai Yi quickly lied, saying that even though he was a warrior, he wanted to balance his abilities and challenge his weaknesses, cleverly hiding the fact that he secretly wanted to train his new mage profession. Just then, Ji-Yan raised her hand, saying she was also interested in practicing elemental control. The teacher gave in and told the two to do as they pleased, but urged them to do their best. During the final assessment sign-up, Ji-Yan walked up to Bai Yi, suggesting they practice together, but he quickly told her he was entering a private room, effectively rejecting her. Ji-Yan, claiming the rejection had actually fired her up, vowed to do her best in the assessment. While training in the elemental room, Bai Yi encountered some difficulty as he was still very new to the mage profession, but he planned to master it in the short time he had. He also planned to hide his ability to switch professions, since the school was under the Divine Guild's supervision and every student's move was watched. He wanted to avoid becoming an early target for their guards. Meanwhile, Ji-Yan trained with only 1% elemental suppression, foolishly thinking she could rival Bai Yi's strength. Bai Yi was also not yet ready to interact with his classmates, believing he needed to protect them from his coming path of revenge. After school, Specs and his friend caught up to Bai Yi, telling him to slow down. These two had been Bai Yi's best friends in middle school in his past life. Because they were all weak, they shared the same fate of being bullied. Having his weak friends around was the only happy moment he had during that time. Now, aiming solely for revenge, Bai Yi didn't believe he needed social interactions to achieve his goal. He got on his bicycle and rode off, leaving them behind. They couldn't believe he ran off again, as they were supposed to be an unbreakable trio. Specs pointed out that Bai Yi had totally changed since the awakening, now appearing like a confident person. Moments later, they caught up to Bai Yi, who was waiting for them. He simply told Specs to get his lungs checked when he was free. The two were happy he had finally stopped, but Bai Yi shattered their hopes again, telling them they were too slow to keep up with him. He got on his bike and rode off, leaving the two of them standing in shock. In his past life, Specs was suddenly diagnosed with a lung disease and tragically passed away shortly after. Bai Yi wanted Specs to stay alive and healthy, even if they couldn't be friends. On the other hand, Specs believed that Bai Yi was still the same person at heart, even though he now appeared cold and distant.